Alrighty, we're going to be looking at plate 3 today. This is called a tube bulkhead. This is going to be plate number 3. And here's our template file, which is called Intro to AutoCAD Plate 3. You're going to notice several things that are different about this title block that we have. Number one, there is no longer a real name to the title here. We have to input that now. Same as we did before, we have to input our name and our period and the date. And you're also going to notice this time we have to put in the plate number. Okay? So what we're going to do first is, before we do anything else, we're going to go ahead and we're going to type in autosave. So AUTO. Wasn't in the computer or in the AutoCAD. I'm going to type in autosave, enter. I'm going to change the value from 0 to 1. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to come up to my A, save as. I'm going to make sure that I'm in my 900 drive. And I'm going to title it as plate 3. Now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to find one of my old drawings. Here's an old drawing here for my period 9. There's my last name, first name. And it's 01. Well, before I click save, what I'm going to do is I'm going to change it to 03. And I'm going to go ahead and click save. Now, in this case, it's going to ask me, hey, do I want to replace it? And in this case, I would say yes. In your case, you shouldn't have that come up. But if you ever get that warning, make darn well sure that you have the name of the file changed. So let's take a look at this drawing here. We're going to notice a couple of unique things. The lines that we have to draw are on an angle. Now take a look here. Do you see how this line is broken here? Don't worry about it. That's just something that happens when the file gets converted over. I'm going to show you a way that might help with correcting this before we actually finish the drawing. You'll also notice that my circle here is a little goofed up too. These are things that happen when AutoCAD converts over to a PDF. It's not anything that is a real big deal. Now, you're going to notice that we have some circles on this drawing. We're going to have some specific places that we have to put given items. We're also going to try to center this object onto this drawing space as best as we can. And we're not going to go for perfection here. We're just going for getting an understanding of how to get it close. We can always move it later on if we want to. So let's go ahead and get started here. And how am I going to find the center of this place? Well, I could draw a line here. I can measure. I could create all these different lines to create a center point. But I'm going to do one easy thing. I'm going to go ahead and left click up here. I'm going to come down to this corner and I'm going to make sure that I'm hovering over this corner right here. And notice I have a green little block here. I'm going to left click on that little green block. I'm going to right click to get myself out of the command. Right click. And I'm going to hit enter. You can also use the space bar. Space bar is a little bit quicker. So again, let me just review. I was in the line command. I had a green square that showed up here. I left clicked. I dragged it down to this other corner. I got another green square and I left clicked. I then right clicked and canceled out, or excuse me, right clicked and entered, or I just simply hit the space bar, whichever way you want to do it. Some people like to use the keyboard. Some people just like to try to use everything from the mouse. It's up to you. So now you're going to ask, Mr. Q, how in the world do I find the center now that we've drawn this diagonal line? Does that really help us? And the answer is yes. I could, if I was doing this on paper, I could draw another diagonal line going from there to there, and it would tell me my center point. But AutoCAD does something kind of cool for us. If I click on the object, notice what it does. It gives me the center point right here. I'm going to hit escape 2 times just to get myself out of that because I don't really need that right now. So what we're going to do now is we're going to look at creating this circle here. Let's just start right in the middle of our object and work from there. So I'm going to go into the circle command, and we're going to create a circle from the center of this line. And you're going to notice that AutoCAD only gives me the option of an endpoint here and an endpoint here. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to try putting in a command. I'm going to type in CENTER. Okay. Or actually, I'm sorry. I'm going to type in mid, MID. That's a little bit easier. Now it's going to ask for the midpoint of what? And I want the midpoint of this line. Now, the next thing it's going to say is it's going to say specify radius of circle, or, and then it puts it in parentheses, diameter. Let's take a look at our object. Is this a radius or a diameter? Correct. It's a diameter. And how do we know it's a diameter? By simply looking at this symbol right here. This symbol indicates that it's a diameter. If it was a radius, there would be an R instead of this circle with a line going through it. And we're going to go ahead and we're going to click on diameter. And it's going to ask us, what's the diameter? We're going to look over here and we're going to go 1.4. Enter. Perfect. So now we no longer need this diagonal line. I'm going to go ahead and select it and hit the delete key. The DELETE key. So now we have all this. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to simply draw one reference line in the horizontal. And I'm going to hit the space bar, get myself back into the command. And I'm going to draw one vertical line. Now, I could go ahead, I could go into the extend command and I could extend this down or I could extend it over. But I don't want to do that. I want to keep this easy. So I'm just going to go ahead and left click on the object. Notice how I get those endpoints again. I'm going to left click on my bottom point and I'm going to make sure that my line stays straight. I'm going to then come up here. I'm going to left click on this object and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to stretch it out nice and long. Now, I don't care that these points don't match up. Those that mean nothing to us anymore, okay? So I'm going to go just hit escape because I know that those lines intersect at the center point there. So these are only reference for us. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to start using the offset command and I'm going to start creating the outline to this object. Now, from this center point, I can look right here and I know that there's a certain distance that needs to go down to get to this bottom here. So it's 1.4 to this point right here and then another 1.4. So let's go ahead and kill 2 birds with 1 stone, as they would say. Let's come up to the modify and come over to offset. And let's type in a distance. What distance do you think that's going to be? Perfect. 1.4. And I'm going to go ahead and offset it down 1 time. That's going to get me the center point for this circle right here. I'm going to offset it down 1 more time. And that's going to give me the center, or excuse me, the bottommost line of my object. So now the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and hit enter. And I try to keep my math down to the bare minimums because we can get messed up very easily in our math by simply trying to add something in our head or whatever. So let's take a look at figuring out where this point here and this point here are. And you can notice that the dimension's the same on both sides. So that means that these are equal. Now, I'm going to go ahead and use this number, 3.8. So I'm going to hit the space bar because we were in the offset command before. And I'm going to type in 3.8, enter. I'll select my line and give it a direction. Right click and enter. Now let's go ahead and figure out the distance from here to here. Can somebody tell me what it is? Good. This number right here, 4.8. Let's go back into offset again. Type in 4.8, enter. And let's take this bottom line and offset it upwards. Right click, enter, or hit the space bar, whichever you want. So now you're going to notice that we have 1 line, 2 lines, 3 lines, 4 lines, 5 lines. How many do I have here? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Good. All right, we're good. So now the next thing that we need to do is we need to kind of start figuring out some symmetry to figure out these sides here. And you're going to notice that there's one big problem. We have no distance from here out to our outside edges. Okay, we have nothing saying that it's X amount of distance from here to here. But what we do have is we have visually, it looks like this is going right through the center of the object. And if there's no dimension saying what something is, then what we're going to do is we're going to simply assume that the distance is correct. Now, I could go about this a couple different ways. I could go and I could try figuring out the math of what half of 2 is. That's pretty easy. 4, that's pretty easy. But 1.6, it's a little bit more complicated. I'm going to show you a little trick here that we're going to do. Instead of using offset, there's nothing wrong with using offset. I'm going to go back into the circle command. And I'm going to pick an endpoint. Let's use this bottom one here. This 1.6, because that's kind of a tough one. I'm going to click on here. And let's imagine from here to here, this is the diameter of my circle, just like these are, because it's being measured from this point here through the center to this other end. Let's click on diameter, and let's type in 1.6. Now, this point right here, this end point here, and this end point here are the exact length that I need them to be. And while I'm here, why don't I come up to the modify again and use the trim and correct what I need. So let's pick our boundary. This is our boundary. Right click, left click on the piece that we want to get rid of, left click on the piece we want to get rid of, right click, and enter. Now I'm going to go ahead and select this object here and delete it. So now I have the first of my lines. Okay. So now next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to draw another circle. And this time I'm going to use a diameter of 2 on this top line. I'm going to pick right here. And I'm going to come down and click on diameter. Or I could hit the D since the D was highlighted. And I'm going to type in 2. Enter. Again, come up to my trim. Pick my boundary. Right click. Select. Didn't work. Right click. Select my boundary. Select my boundary that I want to get rid of. Right click. Enter. Select my object. Delete. Now I've got my second object line, and that's the top of my object. So top of my object, bottom of my object. Now let's go ahead and do one more circle. Center point, diameter. So let's do D, enter, because you're going to notice right here, see how it's highlighted in blue for D. So I'm going to hit D, enter. And I'm going to put in distance of 4. Enter. Oops. I think something went wrong with my command. I think I hit D too many times. Try it again. Center point, D, enter, 4, enter. There we go. That looks better. Now, somebody tell me what the next step is. What tool are we going to use? Perfect. Trim. Come up back up here, back over here, and go to trim. Trim. Pick our boundary. Right click. Select our objects that we want to get rid of. Right click, enter, or you can use the spacebar. Delete that object off. Now I have this endpoint right here and this endpoint right here. I can start creating a little bit more of my object. Let's go ahead and use the line command. Go from here to here to here. Right click, enter. Now I can come over here and I could draw in these pieces. Let's go ahead and do that. Right click, enter. Let's go ahead and get rid of some of the information that we don't need anymore. I no longer need this piece, no longer need this piece, no longer need this piece. Oops. Do I need that piece? Ooh, I think I did. So let's go back and do an undo. So up here we have undo, but I can't see where my undo button is. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to click on this little fast forward button is what I'd call it. And I now have the undo button. And I can do that as many times as I need to get back to where I was. Okay, so that's perfect. I can also do Control Z on the keyboard. So now let's do this the right way. Let's get rid of that line. Okay. So AutoCAD will automatically keep as many steps as you've done in this session so that you can back up. Now, the only thing is, if you back up too far, you can't really go forward because you're going to lose your detail. So if you back up and you change something and then you try to go forward, you can't go forward at that point. But if you go back too far and you're like, oh, nope, I went back too far, you can always do the redo button, which is this one right here. Okay, for us, it's shaded out right now because it won't let me do that. But the redo button will allow me to go forward again so long as I don't make any changes. Let's go ahead and get this circle in here now. And the diameter for that circle is what number? 0.8. So now I'm going to come in here, select this line, and hit delete. I'm pretty good now with the drawing. The drawing is done. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to change the title of it. So I'm going to put this as tube bulkhead. Bulkhead is one word. Notice what happened here in my title block. I've lost my spacing between the title of drawing and the scale. So I'm just going to hit enter, space that out, click in the black abyss, come back down, double click on my name, and I'm going to go ahead and type my name. Notice what just happened to my name. It got jammed over into the center of this text box. Sometimes this happens, not all the time. If this happens to you, come up into the paragraph, and then you're going to find this icon is highlighted right now, which is the default. We want to change it so that it is left justify. If we were working on the date or the plate number, we would use right justify. We wanted it perfectly centered, then we would use the centering. I'm going to go ahead and hit the enter key, click after period, and I'm going to put my period number in. Click in the black abyss again. Double click on my date, select it, type in JAN because we're still in January 28. So JAN period 28 comma 2021. And then I'm going to hit enter key. And now I have to change my plate number to 03. Click in the black abyss again. Double check everything looks good. All right, I think it looks good to me. Title block looks correct. Looks right there. So the only thing that you're going to ask is, do I need to put dimensions on it? And the answer is no. We're not going to worry about dimensioning until our next drawing. So let's go ahead and just do a save. Be on the safe side. And then let's go ahead and do an export as a PDF. And then we would go ahead and check, make sure that the name of the file is correct, that it's exporting as an extents, and it's saving to our 900 drive. If it's doing that, we can go ahead and hit save. And that's it. The last thing that you're going to do is you're going to upload this file to Schoology. Good luck. If you have any questions, make sure you talk to your instructor.